The air in the Hürtgen forest didn't just feel cold. It felt dead. It was late 1944, and this dense, dark woodland had become a meat grinder, the most brutally contested, soul-destroying ground on the Western Front. The ground was no longer earth. It was a perpetual, sucking mire, a shallow grave of frozen blood and splintered wood. The trees, thick and towering evergreens, offered no cover. They were razor-sharp shrapnel traps, exploding overhead in deadly tree bursts that turned rain into steel. For the men of Company D, every second of life was dictated by one high-pitched, frantic sound, the rhythmic, mechanical fury of the MG-42. The Germans proudly called it the Hitlermull, the mill of Hitler. The Americans simply called it the buzzsaw. It was a mechanical reaper, spitting out 1,200 rounds a minute, constantly reminding the pinmen that their time had utterly run out. The company was already reeling for what the soldiers cynically called a Hürtgen sickness, a combination of trench foot, fever, and the deep, paralyzing exhaustion of knowing every step led to an ambush. The source of this unending terror was Pillbox 47, a log and concrete bunker positioned perfectly at a critical crossroads. Its interlocking fire created a killing zone that had already swallowed 3 full frontal assaults, leaving a field of silent bodies frozen into the mud. This wasn't merely a successful defense. It was tactical perfection. The German engineers had eliminated every standard flanking maneuver. Seasoned veterans, men who had survived D-Day and fought across France, were now reduced to paralyzed, shivering wrecks, uselessly hugging the freezing earth. The problem was not a lack of courage. It was a sheer, brutal impossibility of the situation. The air pressure alone from the MG-42 fire felt like a physical weight crushing them into the mud. Captain Miller, his uniform torn and his face a mass of exhaustion and grime, stared at the devastating truth. He carried the weight of 50 dead men in his silence. He was a commander whose training manuals had failed him, whose maps were obsolete, and whose only remaining strategic asset was a handful of demoralized, freezing infantrymen. Their radio was silent. Their artillery support was blind in the perpetual fog, and the clock was ticking down to total annihilation. He was faced with the ultimate, terrifying choice, a fatal retreat or total loss. He had no good men left for a move that mattered. He had run out of options. Sergeant Harris, the grizzled platoon sergeant, watched the captain with an expression of cold, weary judgment. Harris had seen commanders panic, break, and die. He was the anchor of the company, and his contempt for their current position was thick enough to taste. He was prepared to die here, but he was not prepared to die pointlessly. He waited, his knuckles white around his rifle, ready for Miller to finally call the inevitable, dishonorable retreat. It was into this desperate, thick void that a slight figure emerged from the rear, a place normally reserved for the uninitiated and protected. Private Thomas Allen. Tommy. He was barely 18. His uniform was suspiciously clean, a badge of his non-combat status. And his hands, tragically, were usually covered in potato peelings or stew grease. He was the cook's assistant, the kitchen boy. When Captain Miller asked, his voice raw, if anyone had an idea, any desperate, absurd last chance, Tommy stepped forward. He moved with the quiet decisiveness of a man who knows the quickest way to clean a deep fat fryer. The reaction was immediate, ugly, and devastating. Sergeant Harris, fueled by terror and the shame of failure, erupted, his voice cracking with a terrifying mixture of professional contempt and raw, exposed fear. Get back to your rations, kid. This isn't a mess hall. You'll just get in the way and waste good ammo. Harris's rage wasn't just directed at Tommy. It was a desperate attempt to reject the false hope the boy represented. He couldn't stomach the idea of sending a naive boy to certain death to cover their veteran failure. A brief, strangled chuckle, brittle and cruel, rose from the pinned men. The final, ugly sound of men laughing at their own funeral, directed entirely at the cook who dared to show courage when every veteran instinct screamed despair. The cook, asking to fight the buzzsaw, the absurdity was a punch to the gut. But Tommy wasn't looking at the front line. He was looking at the ground beneath it. He wasn't thinking about standard grenades or bazookas. He was thinking about systems. He was thinking about the drainage culvert, the sewage runoff pipe that was too tight, too filthy, and too demeaning for any real soldier to consider. His small, thin frame, The very thing they mocked was the only key that could unlock that door. His mind, unclouded by failed doctrine, saw the simple, disgusting solution. The way the German defenses were designed to withstand heavy fire, but not to withstand sewage. He laid out his plan with methodical calm that was alien in the panic of the Hurtgen. "Sir," he said, his voice quiet but steady, "they didn't protect the drain. It runs under the pillbox, feeds a septic pit. They need ventilation." He made his request, and the inventory confirmed their scorn. Not a rocket launcher, but 6 kitchen smoke canisters. The cheap, thick canisters designed to mask the glow and scent of a field stove from observation. He needed a length of wire, and crucially, a tin of heavy lubricating grease from the field stove. His arsenal was one of domestic ingenuity, a collection of mundane items ready to defeat the highly specialized. "The grease," he explained, "is to kill the sound of the pins." Captain Miller, staring into the abyss of his failed strategy, saw a flicker of pure, outrageous logic. He gave a single, resigned nod. The captain knew he was sending a boy to die, but he also knew the whole company was already marked for death. He gave him 30 minutes. Tommy Allen, the kitchen boy, slipped into the mud, armed with the humble tools of the mess hall, ready to take on the most terrifying weapon of the Third Reich. The moment Tommy entered the culvert, the world shrank into a black, foul, claustrophobic tunnel. The stink of sewage and waste was overwhelming, a paralyzing wet cold that seeped into the bones, but the true sensory horror was the sound. The MG-42's thunder was no longer just loud. It was vibrating the very pipe against his ribs. Every round was a physical pulse, a brutal, metallic reminder of the thickness of his skin and the thinness of the metal above him. He had to suppress a rising wave of nausea and terror, focusing his entire being on the slick, cold path ahead. Tommy fought an intense, silent battle against the urge to recoil. He was driven by something beyond simple courage, a cold, clear focus on survival. He pushed past the filth, finding a weird mechanical rhythm in the crawl. He was thinking like a plumber, a maintenance man, a cook, not a killer. He focused on his hands, practicing the repetitive movements of the mess hall, now manipulating the wire in the thick, cold grease he'd brought. The grease, the signature scent of his humiliation, was now his key to absolute silence, ensuring that when he pulled the pins on the first 3 smoke canisters, there would be zero metallic click. He was fighting technology with absolute craft. Inside the bunker, Gunner Klaus felt nothing but boredom and contempt. The Americans were stuck predictable and weak. He had fired over 4,000 rounds in the last 12 hours. The concrete walls were thick, the ventilation unit hummed, and the smell was a familiar mix of hot oil, cordite, and stale sweat. The smell of victory. "They will try the flank again, Franz," he muttered to his loader, lighting a cigarette. "They never learn." Then the air shifted. It wasn't the metallic tang of an American grenade. It was something sickeningly organic, cloyingly sweet, and intensely rancid. It was a smell of burning cooking fat, overlaid with thick, acrid smoke that immediately attacked the throat and eyes, not with the chemical burn of battle, but with the searing, humiliating sting of a stove fire gone terribly wrong. "Rouch! Smoke! What is this?" Franz gagged, tearing off his headphones. The sophisticated German gas masks, designed to filter out nerve agents and industrial toxins, were completely ineffective against the heavy, organic particles of the kitchen smoke. The smoke canisters, cheap and crude, were doing a job no military weapon could. They were exploiting a blind spot of smell and contempt. The elite crew, trained to withstand any assault, were reduced to hysterically retching, blinded by a cloud of grease and wood fire residue. The MG-42 sputtered, coughed, and fell into a strained, eerie silence. Klaus, blinded and gagging, desperately tried to pivot his weapon, but the smoke was too dense, too immediate. The position, designed to hold out for weeks, was rendered useless in seconds by a canister of glorified chimney smoke. Back in the trench, the silence of the buzzsaw was immediate and terrifying. It was a sudden, unnatural silence of machines stopping mid-cycle. Every man froze. The collective tension was so thick it was audible, the shallow, ragged breathing of men. Sergeant Harris felt a physical shockwave of all hit him, chasing away the dread. Then there was Tommy's cue. He scrambled onto the roof, covered in filth, adrenaline burning away the cold. The bunker was silent, its deadly gun neutralized by the cook's smoke. He quickly dropped his final 2 grenades down the primary vent shaft. A muffled, thunderous boom rocked the concrete structure, followed by the sickening sound of heavy internal collapse. The silence that followed was absolute, sacred, and life-saving. Pillbox 47 was defeated. The silence was a signal. It wasn't a moment for cheering. It was the abrupt, deafening release of the tension that had held Company D hostage for 2 days. Captain Miller and Sergeant Harris, seeing the smoke and hearing the blast, exchanged a look that contained volumes of apology and awe. The collective inhale from the company was the first genuine breath they'd taken in 48 hours. The fear was instantly replaced by an exhilarating rush of aggressive momentum. They were the first to reach the smoking pillbox. They pulled Private Thomas Allen from the mire, a shaking mudcake hero. He was drenched in filth, trembling from the cold and the adrenaline. Yet his eyes, those young, simple eyes, held a victorious fire. He was repulsive, coated in the refuse of the battlefield, yet utterly glorious. The relief was palpable, but beneath it was a quiet, burning satisfaction of the ridiculed kitchen boy who had, against all odds, proved every single one of them wrong. The grizzled sergeant, unable to speak, simply extended a rough, gloved hand, a quiet, powerful acknowledgement that spoke more loudly than any medal ever could. The laughter was silenced forever, replaced by a profound and lasting awe that would follow Tommy Allen for the rest of his war. The men didn't see a cook anymore. They saw the drainpipe ghost. The German crew, later interrogated, confirmed their utter bewilderment. They were prepared for high explosives and poison gas, for the tools of military professionals, but not for the choking, sickening smell of burnt cooking fuel. Their elite defense, designed to stop tanks and veteran troops, was defeated by a domestic product, by the sheer, humiliating absurdity of being overcome by kitchen smoke. Their official report cited unconventional and unsporting chemical attack via subterranean waste route. Tommy's victory transcended his company. The men were freed from the psychological trap of tactical rigidity. They saw, firsthand, that sometimes the most effective weapon isn't the biggest, but the most unexpected. They learned that the true blind spot in warfare isn't geographical. It's arrogance. The cook had forced the enemy to defeat themselves, exploiting a weakness no one, least of all the Nazis, ever thought to defend. This moment, more than any barrage, restored their belief in the possibility of breaking the line. The immediate aftermath saw Company D sweep across the crossroads, their advance fueled not just by adrenaline, but by a fresh, fierce belief in their own ingenuity. That single act of unconventional warfare had done more for morale than a month of official commendations. The story of the drainpipe ghost immediately entered the lore of the 4th Infantry Division, a constant, whisper reminder that genius can be found where you least expect it, hiding beneath a layer of grease and mud. The long-term impact of Tommy's feat was profound. Field commanders began to circulate reports about the kitchen smoke incident, recognizing the critical lesson. Low-tech resourcefulness defeats high-tech rigidity. Tommy Allen didn't just save his unit. He subtly shifted the tactical mindset of a whole sector, proving that the tools of everyday life, if used with audacity, could breach fortifications that heavy guns could not touch. It was a victory not of brute force, but of sheer, common-sense ingenuity. Despite earning the Silver Star, Thomas Allen made no fanfare. He cleaned himself up, gathered his utensils, and returned to his pots and pans. He didn't ask for a new assignment. He remained a cook, but he was now the legendary cook. The man who proved that courage is not measured by the strength of your back or the rank on your collar, but by the willingness to defy conventional wisdom and find solution when the experts have given up all hope. This incredible story of Thomas Allen, the kitchen boy who became a tactical ghost, is the ultimate proof that true heroism often comes from the most unexpected places, armed with the most unconventional weapons. It is a story that demands to be told. If this incredible, unbelievable tale of Thomas Allen and his kitchen ingenuity surprised you, then you know this channel is a permanent home for history's most shocking, untold stories. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single deep dive. For another tale of a soldier defying orders to secure victory, click the video now. It's about the tank commander whose crazy reverse strategy shot